This happened a couple of years ago, right before summer break. It was the very last day of 8th grade. You can probably imagine the atmosphere, everyone buzzing with excitement, hugging friends, saying bittersweet goodbyes, and scribbling cheesy messages in yearbooks. My middle school was massive, well over 1,000 students. To make the yearbook signing chaos a little more organized, teachers collected the books and passed them around different classrooms so everyone got a chance to sign. But honestly, that just opened the door for problems. Some kids used it as an excuse to write mean things to people they didn't like. So, when I finally got my yearbook back at the end of the day, I started flipping through the pages, laughing at goofy notes from my friends. But then, one message stopped me cold. It was signed by someone I'd never seen before. The name read, Samuel Robinson III. That name is burned into my memory. His message was short, but chilling. Hags, I'll be seeing you again. At first, I just stared at it in confusion. I didn't know this kid, had never spoken to him. Nothing. The school year was over, so there wasn't much I could do about it. I told myself it was probably some weird mistake, or just a kid being weird, so I let it go. That night, I had a sleepover with my best friends Kevin, David, and Kieran. We camped out in my basement, stuffing our faces with Doritos and staying up way till late playing Call of Duty. My parents' bedroom was 3 floors up, so we didn't worry much about noise. It was around 2 a.m., and we were messing around on my dad's rowing machine when a sudden knock on the storm door froze us in place. The sound was sharp, deliberate, and way too close. We all looked at each other. Who the hell would be knocking on my basement door at 2 in the morning? Whoever it was, they either knew we were down there, or they didn't want to wake my parents. Neither option made sense. The knocking kept going. Same rhythm, same pattern. Before I could stop him, Kieran shouted, "Who's there?" My heart dropped. Now whoever was outside knew for sure we were in the basement. There was a long pause. Then, a voice answered back. "Come around to the back door." It was a teenager's voice. High-pitched, almost cheerful, like a friend asking to join the sleepover. That made it even creepier. My friends thought it was exciting. Like some random kid had just shown up to hang out. Me. I felt sick, but against my better judgment, they pressured me to check it out. We crept upstairs quietly, and I inched toward the back door. Through the narrow glass pane, I saw him. My stomach dropped. It was him, Samuel Robinson III, the same kid who had signed my yearbook. My friends actually started to open the door, but I stopped them. I quickly explained who he was, and that shifted the mood instantly. Sam was still standing there, watching us through the glass. He began motioning for me to come closer, pointing toward the kitchen window like he wanted to talk. And here's the thing, you're probably wondering why none of us took this more seriously. But in our heads, it wasn't some creepy old man, it was a kid from our school. That made it feel less threatening, even though deep down, I was terrified. I cracked the kitchen window open just a little. My friend stood behind me. Sam walked over, smiling. "Oh, so you got my message," he said, introducing himself as Sam. Then he started talking about how he'd watched me from afar, and how we could have been great friends. I played along, nodding, agreeing, just trying not to set him off. But inside, I knew there was no reality where I'd ever be friends with this guy. Finally, I asked the question that had been clawing at me. "How did you even know where I live?" He didn't answer. He just stared at me. Before I could say anything else, David blurted out, "You're a creepy stalker, get lost." Sam's smile instantly vanished, his head tilted to the side, like he didn't understand what David had just said. Then his face twisted, hatred pouring out of him. He started screaming, saying he hated my friends, that we should all die. He yelled about my ex, about private things he had no business knowing. Then he lunged at the window, trying to pry it open. I slammed it shut and locked it just in time. He snarled and banged on the glass, animal-like. Each hit harder than the last. I was sure he was going to break it. The noise was so loud. My parents rushed downstairs, demanding to know what was going on. The second they appeared, Sam bolted. My dad ran outside, but Sam was gone like he'd vanished into thin air. For some reason, my parents didn't call the cops that night. They said they'd handle it with the school the next day, giving the kid the benefit of the doubt. But the next morning, we learned the truth. Sam had been expelled weeks before the school year ended. He wasn't supposed to be there on the last day at all. The only reason his picture was in the yearbook was because they were printed before his expulsion, which meant he had snuck into the school just to leave me that message. The school tried to investigate, but Sam and his family, it was like they didn't exist. No address, no record, nothing. To this day, no one knows how he found out where I lived. That's what keeps me up at night. My friend Garrett is just a little unhinged. He's the kind of guy who wears his craziness like a badge of honor. He's always boasting about how wild and aggressive he is, like it's something to be proud of. The truth is, he's constantly picking fights, mouthing off to people, and spending more time at the gym than anywhere else, including his own home. There are at least 5 different stories I could tell you that would prove how reckless he is, but the one I'm about to share is by far the scariest. And unlike the others, this one happened directly to me. It was just a couple of weeks ago, our very last day of senior year. May 2019, graduation wasn't for a few more days, but classes were officially done. And if you've ever been around a college campus at that time, you know what happens. The seniors get wasted. By 10 p.m., the entire senior class had gathered at the clock tower in the center of campus. Over 1,000 students were crammed into that courtyard, drinking, yelling, laughing, letting years of stress finally burn off. For me, it was bittersweet, but most people were just relieved finals were over. That night, our group was 6 deep: me, Garrett, and a few of my closest friends, whose names I'll keep private. We lived off campus, so eventually we started making the walk home through the city. It wasn't unusual to see homeless people at night. They usually kept to themselves, but not this guy. As we crossed the street, a homeless man came out of nowhere and started tweaking, screaming like he was a guard blocking the other side of the road. At first, we laughed and tried to give him space, circling wide so we wouldn't provoke him. Everyone except Garrett, of course. Instead of ignoring the guy, Garrett started yelling back, telling him to get out of the road, to stop bothering us. The homeless man didn't take it well. He stormed a few steps forward, chest puffed like he was ready to fight. The rest of us quickly stepped in, trying to keep Garrett from throwing the first punch. The man eventually backed off, just going back to his ranting. I grabbed Garrett's arm and tried to pull him away, but he shoved me off. And before anyone could stop him, he did what Garrett always does: he charged. He sprinted at the man full force, screaming. The homeless man bolted instantly, running down the street like his life depended on it. Garrett stopped, laughing hysterically, like he had just scattered a flock of pigeons. At the time, even I couldn't help but laugh, but it didn't stay funny for long, because as we continued our walk home, we realized the man was following us. Every time we looked back, there he was shouting about how we'd made a big mistake and saying something about calling a niche, whatever that meant. We were drunk, stupid, and cocky, so instead of taking it seriously, we heckled him back. Looking back, that was a terrible idea. When we finally got near our house, he was still trailing behind us. I didn't feel comfortable leading him to where we lived, and the others agreed. But Garrett took off running toward him again, forcing him to flee. We thought that was the end of it. It wasn't later that night, after hours of partying at the house. I stumbled outside to grab a DoorDash order. That's when I noticed something that froze me in place. The side gate to our backyard was wide open. We always tied it shut with a piece of twine. The only way it could be open was if someone had untied it, and instantly, I knew who. Any rational person would have gone back inside and told their friends. But I was drunk, reckless, and stupidly curious. So I set the food down on the porch and went to check. I turned the corner into the backyard, and that's when it happened. Something looped around my neck and yanked tight. A rope. I couldn't breathe. My hands clawed at it, but it was digging into my skin, cutting off everything. I thrashed, panicked, seeing stars. He was strangling me from behind, and I was powerless. I thought I was about to die. With one last desperate move, I kicked backward as hard as I could. My legs connected. He lost his footing, and we both crashed to the ground. Air rushed back into my lungs, but the fight wasn't over. He was on me, scratching and clawing at my face like an animal. I felt blood running down my cheeks as he tried to tear me apart. Fueled by pure survival, I shoved him off with everything I had. He stumbled to his feet and then he ran, disappeared into the night. I was left gasping on the ground, blood dripping down my face, heart pounding so hard I thought it would explode. That night ended in the hospital. The cuts weren't life-threatening, but I needed a handful of shots just in case he carried any diseases. The cops weren't much help, and since I was moving out a week later, there wasn't much else I could do. But the worst part, those cuts were still fresh when graduation day came. Every photo of me in my cap and gown has visible marks across my face. Garrett, to his credit, felt awful and even drove me to the hospital. But I've never blamed him. If anything, I just hope he learned his lesson, because you don't mess with people who have nothing to lose. When I was in 7th grade, there was this kid in my homeroom named Sven, and trust me, he was different. Not the regular quiet kid different, but the type that made you wonder what exactly was going on in his head. He never hung out with anyone. Even when other kids tried to pull him into games or conversations, Sven would just ignore it. Always in the same spot, back corner of every classroom, like it was his assigned territory. And every single day, without fail, he wore the exact same outfit, cargo shorts, and this oversized burgundy hoodie that practically swallowed him whole. Most of the time, he was silent, but whenever he had to speak in class, his voice would boom deep, way deeper than any 7th grader should be. The other kids teased him endlessly for it. He never had friends, not one that I can remember. Honestly, it kind of made sense. There were moments, though, little red flags. Like the time my friend Tyler swore he caught Sven cutting worms open at recess. Yeah, pretty disturbing. And speaking of recess, Sven never played, never ran around. He'd stand alone by the fence that bordered the woods, staring off into the trees. Sometimes kids whispered that he talked to someone on the other side, though I never personally saw it. Still, it was enough to make you uneasy. Anyway, fast forward to the last day of school. At my middle school, there was this weird tradition where kids would sneak into random classrooms to mess with teachers. Teachers knew, but they sort of played along. That day, I ended up in one of the few classes Sven was in. Most of my friends had wandered off to other rooms, so it was just me and him. And Sven was off that day, really off. His leg bounced like a jackhammer under the desk, eyes darting around like he was tracking people. It wasn't subtle, either. It was like he was waiting for something. The class itself was chaotic, as usual for the last day, but I noticed something strange. There were way more kids than I recognized. Sure, some were from other rooms, but they were faces I had never seen before. That didn't make sense. Miss Bell, our teacher, eventually stepped aside to make a phone call. A few minutes later, another teacher slipped in. They whispered just outside the door, short, sharp, secretive. When Miss Bell came back, she didn't address the class. Instead, she and the other teacher quietly knelt beside a few specific kids, whispering so no one else could hear. Then those kids stood up and left with them. I remember sitting there thinking, what the hell is going on? A few minutes later, bam, the fire alarm shrieked through the halls. Miss Bell didn't even flinch. She told us to line up, and out we went. Standard drill, right, except once we were outside, grouped on the field, I glanced back at the building, and that's when I saw movement in the second-story window. Just a flicker, like a shadow shifting, but the school was supposed to be empty. Sirens cut through the air soon after, and suddenly police cars flooded the parking lot, not one or two dozens. Officers bolted straight inside. No explanations. Teachers just told us to stay calm, to wait. Eventually, they dismissed us early, telling everyone to call their parents. We never got the full story at school, but later, my parents told me what they had heard. A group of kids who didn't even go to our school had somehow gotten in. And rumor had it, they weren't just there to mess around. They were planning to burn the place down. Miss Bell had supposedly found something in one of their backpacks, something dangerous. That's why the fire drill happened. They wanted to get everyone out before it escalated. And here's the part that really messed me up. My mom said those kids didn't sneak in on their own. Sven had led them inside, through the side fence, during recess. I never saw Sven again after that day. If you enjoyed these stories, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the bell icon so you never miss more real-life stories just like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.